The evil of man is no match for the evil of women. Here I made a list of 15 women, not just serial killers but truly malicious and dangerous women who have caused calamity in several people's lives. Hell had no fury like a crazy woman, so here is my top 15 evil women in history. At number 15 is Queen Mary I. Now this chick was Queen of England and Ireland from July 1553 until her death. Because of her beliefs, Mary executed many prominent Protestants, leading her to the name Bloody Mary. This chick was so evil and so malicious that a further of 800 Protestants left the country unable to return until her death. She even put a head out on her cousin, Lady Jane Grey, assembling a force in East Anglia and ultimately leading to her cousin getting beheaded. At number 14 is Marie Delphine Lalaurie, also known as Madame Lalaurie. She was Louisiana-born and a socialite. When this evil dame was at parties, she was torturing and murdering her slaves at her fancy Royal Street mansion that is still standing today. Madame Lalaurie starved and chained her slaves in various parts of the house, the attic, the kitchen, and the bedroom. On April 10, 1834, a fire broke out in the Lalaurie residence on Royal Street, starting in the kitchen. When the police and fire marshals got there, they found a 70-year-old woman, the cook, chained to the stove by her ankle. She later confessed to them that she set the fire as a suicide attempt for fear of her punishment, being taken to the uppermost room, because, as she said, anyone who had been taken there never came back. An angry mob was formed, and the coward Lalaurie fled to Paris and stayed there until she died on December 7, 1842. At number 13 is Miyuki Ishikawa, an experienced midwife and serial killer who believed to have murdered many infants with the aid of accomplices through the 1940s. In the 1940s, there were many babies in a maternity hospital, and many of the parents of the babies were poor and unable to raise the child financially. In order to solve the issue, Ishikawa just stopped taking care of the babies, many of whom died from the neglect. It is estimated that Miyuki killed 103 infants. The authorities viewed her homicides as a crime of omission, and she only got 8 years in prison. That's someone you really don't want babysitting your kids. At number 12 is Valerie Solanas, a radical feminist and assassin. Valerie was born on April 9, 1936 in New Jersey. Valerie was best known for her Scum Manifesto, which basically urged women to overthrow the government, eliminate the money system, institute complete automation, and eliminate the male sex. Valerie purchased a gun in the spring of 1968 on June 3rd. She went to the factory where she found Andy Warhol. She shot at Warhol 3 times, the first 2 shots missing and the final wounding Warhol. Solanas then turned herself in to the police. She was charged with attempted murder, assault, and illegal possession of a gun. She served 3-year prison sentence, and even after her release, she continued to promote the Scum Manifesto. She died in 1988 of pneumonia in San Francisco. At number 11 is Fusako Shigenobu. Fusako is a Japanese founder and former leader of the now disbanded Japanese Red Army. After a career as an activist, she volunteered with the PLO before forming the Japanese Red Army. In her attempts to unite Japan under Communist Revolution, Fusako became a terrorist. She is responsible for orchestrating the 1974 attack on the French embassy in The Hague and assisting the 1960 hijacking of TWA Flight 840. According to the police, Shigenobu was disguised as a man when she checked into a hotel at Takasuki. Although age and her disguise might have hidden one of Japan's most wanted terrorists, her certain style of smoking cigarettes is what ultimately gave her away. She puffed a cigarette as if it were a pipe and blew with perfect smoke rings. Fusako was caught in 2000 in Osaka and is sentenced to 20 years in prison on March 8, 2006. When she was caught, she saw cameras pointed at her, and she raised her hands and gave the thumbs up saying, "I'll fight on." to reporters. At number 10 is Wu Zetian, the first and only Empress of China. She ruled her country for almost half a century. At 13, the determined young woman caught the eye of the aging emperor and became one of his concubines. When the emperor died and his son Gaozong became the new emperor, he kept 24-year-old Wu as one of his own concubines, and she began taking steps to gain more power. She used her charm to replace the favorite concubine, and at the same time making allies among the court. Unfortunately, she was ruthless in her determination to rule, and Wu saw no problem with torture and whacking off political enemies, or anyone else she saw as a threat or annoyance. After her husband's death, Wu massacred and exiled those members of government not wholly loyal to her and replaced them. Her son, now emperor, was showing signs of disrespect, so Wu got rid of him, and to put in his place, brought her youngest son, who was easier to manipulate. Eventually, she had him yield the throne to her completely, and Wu broke all precedents by establishing her own dynasty. At number 9, Myra Hindley. Born in 1942, Myra was an English serial killer in a partnership with Ian Brady. She, along with her partner, committed heinous rapes and murders of 5 children between 1962 and 1968. Hindley's 17-year-old brother-in-law tipped her off to the police. Myra pleaded not guilty of all the murders. She was found guilty of 3 murders and was jailed for life. She was never released and died in prison in 2002. At number 8 is Lizzie Borden. Lizzie, along with her sister, lived in a hateful household with her father and stepmother. But unlike most stories with hateful stepmothers, this tale does not have a happy ending. Well, at least for Lizzie's father and stepmother. Abby and Andrew Borden were murdered at their home on the morning of Thursday, August 4th, 1892. Andrew was slumped on a couch in the downstairs sitting room, struck 10 or 11 times with a hatchet-like weapon. One of his eyeballs had been split cleanly in 2, suggesting he may have been asleep when attacked. Soon after, as neighbors and doctors tended Lizzie, Sullivan discovered Abby Borden in the upstairs guest bedroom, her skull crushed by 19 blows. Lizzie's trial took place in New Bedford the following June. On June 20th, after deliberating for an hour and a half, the jury acquitted and she got off scot-free. At number 7, Griselda Blanco, also known as the cocaine godmother and the queen of narco-trafficking. She was the drug lord of the Medellin cartel and a pioneer in the Miami-based cocaine drug trade. She was already kidnapping and murdering children at age 11, ran the cocaine trade with murderous force in New York and Miami. Blanco's willingness to use violence against her Miami competitors or anyone who displeased her led to her rivals to make repeated attempts to kill her. She moved to California to escape the assassination attempts. Unfortunate for her, she was shot in the head in 2012 in a drive-by. At number 6, Mary Ann Cotton. Now Miss Mary was a very greedy woman. So when she found out that she would receive payouts for the death of family members, she wasted no time. She murdered 21 people via arsenic poisoning, 12 of which were her own children. She also killed 4 of her husbands and even her own mother to make a quick buck. Anything for money, I guess. At number 5 is Genene Ann Jones. She was a former nurse who killed somewhere between 1 and 46 infants and children in her care. She used different injections on all her victims to induce a medical crisis, with the intention of reviving them afterward in order to receive praise. The medications that she used were known to cause heart complications when given as an overdose. Children, however, did not survive this attack and could not be revived. In 1985, Jones was sentenced to 99 years in prison for killing 15-month-old Chelsea McLennan with anisetin. Later that year, she was sentenced to a concurrent term of 60 years in prison for nearly killing Rolando Jones with heparin. She was scheduled for mandatory release in 2017 due to a Texas law to prevent prison overcrowding. And number 4 is Clementine Barnabet. Clementine is the leader of the Church of Sacrifice. Clementine is considered the first African female serial killer, having reportedly confessed to orchestrating, participating in 35 murders in southwest Louisiana and southeast Texas. All of her victims were horribly mutilated, with limbs and heads being cut off and strewn about the house. Dismemberment would be followed by a sacrificial ceremony, with chants and rituals. Not only did the ritual sacrifice apparently satisfy the teachings of her church, it also served to eliminate virtually any clue as to who killed the victims and why. And number 3 is Leonarda Cianciulli, also known as the soap maker of Hyoshio. She looks like your regular cute little old lady, but she's anything but sweet and kind. In 1939, Cianciulli heard that her eldest son, Giuseppe, was to join the Italian army in preparation for World War II. Giuseppe was her most precious child, and she was determined to protect him at all cost. This old broad came to the delusion that his safety required human sacrifices. Leonarda found her victims in 3 middle-aged women, all her neighbors. Cianciulli used the remains of the bodies to make soaps that she would later bathe in. In addition to soap, she used dried blood from the victims in her tea cakes that she served to her friends when they would visit. She also claimed that she enjoyed eating them. That's one granny I don't want yummy cookies from. And number 2, Mary Flora Bell. The youngest on our list and a native of Scotchwood, England. She murdered 4-year-old Martin Brown and 3-year-old Brian Howe, but she did not work alone. Her best friend Norma Bell, no relation, took part in the second murder with her. The little bloodthirsty 11-year-old attempted many other murders besides the 2 mentioned before. Soon she tried to strangle the 11-year-old sister of her friend Norma. In 1980, Bell, aged 23, was released from Askham Grange Open Prison, having served 12 years, and was granted anonymity, allowing her to start a new life. In 2009, it was reported that Bell had become a grandmother. And at the number 1 spot, the Blood Countess, Elizabeth Báthory. Born in 1516 and dying in 1640, Elizabeth was a countess from the renowned Báthory family of nobility. She had been labeled the most prolific female serial killer in history, and she was the infamous serial killer of Hungary. The stories of her serial murders and brutality were verified by the testimony of more than 300 witnesses and survivors, as well as physical evidence and the presence of horribly mutilated dead, dying, and imprisoned girls found at the time of her arrest. Using her political status in the 16th century, she was responsible for the torture and murder of over 650 women who were lured into her castle in hopes of finding a job. She was on house arrest and was not put to trial because of her political status. So there you have it, my top 15 evil women in history. Comment below on what top 15 you want me to do next. Also check out my Tumblr, Facebook, and Twitter, and any of my other videos. So, I hope you have a good day, and I hope you have a good life. Bye!